Hey everybody, Iron Liz here. So, I wanted to make a video that weighs in on the Channel Awesome situation, and I am actually not in the United States anymore. So, this is actually in Curacao. It's the house that I'm staying with, and this whole sort of thing came at a really strange time as I was moving out, and I really wanted to kind of weigh in specifically with Channel Awesome, with Justin's sexual assault situations, and my support of the survivors of who had this happen to them, and my place in the whole thing. I know there's been a lot of speculation. I've gone on some streams and whatnot, but I wanted to give you kind of my thoughts on the entire situation, kind of just forward. So, to kind of back up to my original situation with Channel Awesome, is that I was with them between probably 2009 to 2011 or so when I was dating Linkara. I was also on the site for about 6 months or so, and back in my heyday I did tabletop role-playing game reviews. So I reviewed Dungeons & Dragons wasn't one of them, but World of Darkness and Battletech and things like that. So I was mostly, though, with Lewis's stuff. We were dating at the time, and so I would assist him with his videos and do his plot lines and stories and things like that. Well, as it turned out too, I also worked on Suburban Nights. So in 2010, I think, Channel Awesome put together their yearly anniversary movie, and they invited everybody down to Chicago. But Lewis at the time didn't have a vehicle and didn't drive, so they asked me, hey, do you want to come down and kind of help out a little bit? Maybe be production assistant, and you would just drive your vehicle down there, and we'll put you up in the hotel with Lewis. I said, great. So that would save them some money to do that, and so what ended up happening is I drove down there for about 8 hours or so. So not only was I driving down there, but I also ended up having my vehicle be used for the production. So I'd shuttle people around. They had a couple vans that they used, and they just weren't enough. So my vehicle kind of got roped into it, and as well as props that were not being used for production, they would go into that vehicle to get stored. I also ended up working probably from about 6 in the morning. You had to be down in the lobby at 6 a.m. to sometimes 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock at night. So literally the entire day and then some. And really the only time you really got to eat was sometimes in the morning. Sometimes for lunch, if they were doing dinner, which was hit or miss, honestly, then they would feed you at that point. But I was not the talent. That was something that was said very early in the production, where I think it was like the first day or second day I asked if I could get a coffee, and they said, no, that's for the talent, and you're not the talent. And that was funny too, because later on in the production I changed over. I played Cloak 2, so I was an actress in that. And even at that point, when I was still wearing the costume, I was still driving with my vehicle, doing errands and things. And all of this I talk about in the Channel Awesome document, and that's essentially where all this kind of started, was back mid-March. There were a large number of people who were dissatisfied with what happened. Two particular personalities, Obscurus Lupa and Mars Girl, started talking, and they just built it up from there and put it into a document so that it was more cohesive. And so about a week later, that's when I added my information to that. But yeah, I can go into kind of what I already talked about, but I think it's not really necessary. If you were interested in kind of reading the specifics, I'd recommend checking that out. I got hurt on site. They had me sign a waiver saying that they weren't responsible for any injuries before it, and then all footage that they took of me as Cloak 2 was essentially theirs. So, yeah, that was lousy. And I think the real motivator, I think, was for me doing that was to sort of prove that, I was somebody they should hire because I was this hardworking and this willing to do that. And you should never do that. Don't ever do that. Don't ever think that if you work for free or if you do people favors that sometime they're going to pay you back, because they're likely 99% of the time not going to pay you back. Be smart. And I guess I was still a little naive and I had stars in my eyes. So honestly, at this point, I would have been satisfied with just a tank of gas and or gas money and a thank you, but that didn't happen. So I think from my learning experience from Channel Awesome, when I did get on the site, I think that experience definitely put a sour taste in my mouth. I wasn't as on board as I was, and I was only on the site for 6 months. I just sort of let it go. And maybe it was better that I got out early, I guess you could say. When Lewis and I broke up, I had the decision to see if I wanted to, continue with videography, or if I wanted to maybe go back to school or do something interesting. And so one of the main issues on the document was the sexual assault survivor, I guess. Generally, the term that I was trying to use was survivor, not victim. But so let me back up. After I left Channel Awesome, I went back to school. So I wanted to be a cop. I initially wanted to join the armed forces because Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed, and I might have had an opportunity there. Turns out no. So I went back to school to become a cop, and I went into law enforcement. And while I was doing that, I was also volunteering at a sexual assault helpline called the Aurora Center. So the Aurora Center, I did that for about 18 months, and I'm crisis counselor certified, and so I'm able to, or at least I was. I'm not sure if the credential is still active or not, but essentially I'm able to work at a suicide hotline, sexual assault hotline, or crisis hotline. At least I was. Now, as far as my own schooling goes in law enforcement, I've got about a semester left in terms of classes, and then if I pursued what's called the post-certification, I would have the credentials to be a police officer in the state of Minnesota. I would just have to have a municipality or whomever hire me, and then I could do that. Right now I'm in Curacao, so I don't think that's going to happen. So my point is that I'm not, some naive Pollyanna. Like I know what I'm talking about. I have skills and experience to doing this stuff. So there's a homicide investigator that taught one of my classes, and he was with Minneapolis. One of the instructors was the police chief of Oakdale in Minnesota, and I had others like that. Or one had been a commander in St. Paul, or a police commander in St. Paul. So I mean, these are actual police officers teaching, and we of course had sex crime and sexual assault stuff too. So right around the time that Justin's information came out, or that he was fired or let go, or whatever you may classify it as, I had an individual or a friend of mine approach me and say, there's an individual who had been raped. It's not minced words, they'd been raped. And they want to speak to you because they don't know what to do. I still had something of a reputation that I was doing this stuff. So I said, sure, I'll talk to this individual. And based upon my experience volunteering at the Sexual Assault Center, and based upon the education that I had, I was 98% certain they were telling the truth. And the reason I give 2% is because I could be wrong. Certainly I could be wrong, but I don't think I was. They told me this, and Justin was my friend. I would count him at that point as a friend, and I know he was a friend for a lot of people. And so I basically told this person, okay, I believe you, and here's what you might want to pursue doing. Here's some hotlines to call or some counselors to call, get some help. If you want to press charges, here's what you do, and all that stuff. So they had to do what they had to do. And so I basically said, you have my word that I won't speak a word of this, because that's what you do to support a victim or a survivor. So you have to do whatever they feel comfortable doing. It would have been great for me to kind of go out and actually confront Justin about this, but I don't think I was ever really at the point where I could. And what do you say to a friend of yours who's a rapist? I don't know. And I never will have that opportunity. I actually ended up speaking to the leadership at the sexual assault helpline and asked them, well, what do I do in this situation? You know, what's the best course of action? They said, don't do anything. It's not your job to fix everything. Support the survivor in whatever way that they need it, and that's the best way that you'll do what needs to be done. And when you're ready, you can confront your friend about this. So I kept quiet, and this was a secret that I kept for 5 years. And with that document, Channel Awesome released, oh, we're going to debunk these accusations. And the first one they really did was there was a Jane Doe that said that they had been groomed by Justin. And, well, they didn't say it specifically. Channel Awesome basically blurred out the name, but they left kind of the J in the front. And they also matched it up. They left the time stamps. So anybody with half a brain could figure out who it was and when Justin was fired. I get the feeling there's a lot of ugly with this company that I'm not aware of. I know that speaking with Holly, who is the former human resources person there, there's potential other things going on behind the scenes, and again, that's not something I can really go into. I thought for sure when they had me sign the contract after my knee had been kicked in that the only way to see those files would be to get a subpoena and to show that they put forward such an egregious document that there's no way that it would even hold up under court or contract law or any of this stuff. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not presuming to be one. And I'm not accusing anybody of anything. But I thought for sure that I would have to get those files through subpoena because they wouldn't release it, but they did. Channel Awesome, I think, at this point, I'm more just disappointed. I'm just more, they could have done things, they could have been so much more than what they were. They're a flash in the pan and they're gone. And I think now, certainly there's no producers left. I mean, Larry, sure, yeah, he's there as a joke. He's one producer left. Before this whole thing happened, they had 40 or so people, and now it's none. The site's dead. I don't know what the future is for them, and we'll see. I guess part of it is bittersweet, where it's like these are people who took advantage of my labor, and and they essentially sheltered a person who had Justin, who had these problems. And again, I'm not making an allegation because I don't know the full story, but they wanted to bring him back at one point too. So a lot of ugly there.